Hello, in this Coolgrad video, we're going to talk about GRE GMAT exam preparation guidance. We're going to talk about the format of these exams, GRE, GMAT and TOEFL, and we're going to talk about some important study tips. We're going to talk about how to prepare for the verbal, quantitative and analytical writing sections of these exams, and I'm going to give you some information about what sources of information are good. And we're going to talk about the structure of these exams, how to schedule the exams, and what to do on the exam day and what not to. We're going to talk about all this kind of really useful and interesting stuff. And towards the end of the video, I've got some really unconventional advice, very interesting advice about how to prepare for these exams and max them. So let's take a look at each of these exams. So first of all, let's try and understand what is a computer adaptive test. A computer adaptive test, or CAT, is an exam in which the difficulty level of the questions is determined by real-time analysis based on the candidate's performance in the exam. So initially they give you a set of medium difficulty questions, and depending on how you answer them, so if you get the question right, it gives you a tougher question, and if you get that right, it gives you a question that's even more difficult. And it tries to assess your level of intelligence. And if you get it wrong, it gives you an easier question. And if you get that wrong, it gives you an even more easier question. So it's like it tries to adjust the level of difficulty of the exam to the way you answer. And if you're getting tougher and tougher questions in an exam like the GMAT, then it's a sign of progress. It means that you have the chance to max it and get a really good score. If your questions are getting easier, maybe you got a few of them wrong. So, I mean, most of the candidates are not really qualified to assess what question is difficult and what question is easy. So, but that's usually the way these exams work. They have different pools of questions, different categories, like very difficult, medium difficult, and easy, that kind of questions. They give you the most suitable question depending on how you're performing. And even if you're doing very well up to a point, you get something wrong, it makes it slightly easier for you. So it tries to adjust the level of difficulty based on your performance. So the GMAT and TOEFL are computer adaptive tests as of now, but the GRE used to be computer adaptive till a few years ago, but it's no longer computer adaptive. So that's something you need to keep in mind. But you don't have to really worry about this too much as a test taker. If you're giving these exams, you don't have to worry about whether it's computer adaptive or not. It's just useful to know this. So the first few questions are medium difficulty, and then if you're getting more and more challenging questions, there's a chance that you can max the exam. It's a good sign, actually. And but if you start getting easy questions, it's nothing for you to panic about, because you probably are not the best judge about which questions are really difficult and which questions are easy. So just answer every question to the best of your ability, that's all. So what is GRE? GRE stands for Graduate Record Examination. It's an entrance exam to graduate studies at universities in many Western countries. So if you're trying to do a master's in engineering, or like in the science department, or even in physics or computer science, you'll have to most probably give the GRE exam. So there are very few universities which give you a waiver, so where you don't have to take the GRE, or very few engineering schools which accept GMAT instead or some other exam instead. So most of the schools require you to take the GRE. And GRE is offered in the English language and is offered in most of the countries of the world. GRE is conducted by test organizing agencies such as ETS, and the GMAT, ETS is Educational Testing Services, and GMAT is conducted by the ACT. So this is about the structure of the GRE exam. So let's take a look at the format of the GRE exam. So we're also going to talk about when to take the GRE and how much it costs. So you must take the GRE at least a couple of months before you submit your application, so that you can report your exam scores at the time of applying. So suppose you're applying to fall 2016 semester, then you have to submit your application mostly by the end of October or like early November of 2015 for fall semester admission. So suppose your application deadline is November 15th of 2015, then you must plan to take the GRE at least 2 months before, so preferably by August or September. So when you complete the GRE exam, so immediately at the end of the exam it will give you the verbal and quantitative scores. So but the analytical writing scores will take about 2 to 3 weeks at least for you to get the scores. So you have to submit the complete exam scores at the time of applying. So you have to take the exam at least 2 months before the deadline. So as of June 2016, the GRE exam costs $205 in India. So each time you take the exam, it costs, and there's also like a rescheduling fee. So if you schedule the GRE exam for a particular date at a particular center, and then you have to reschedule it for whatever reason, there's usually like a $50 rescheduling fee as of 2016. So at the time of applying, you have to submit a copy of your score report, and you also have to inform ETS or the testing agency like ACT to directly send the score report to the university. So you submit your copy of the score report, and the original score report copy has to come from the testing agency, and to submit to each university costs about $25 to $27, I guess. So remember to take the GRE well in advance, because if you don't do well for the first time, you will also need time to retake the exam and resubmit the scores. So you need at least to have like 2 months before the deadline. You have to take the GRE. So the structure of the GRE exam. So it has a verbal, quantitative, and analytical writing or essay writing section. The quantitative section is mostly high school math. So it's about arithmetic, algebra, geometry, logic, trigonometry. There's all these questions about like permutations and combinations and probabilities and ratios and proportions, and then arithmetic progressions and series, and there's stuff about geometric volumes and surface areas of various solids and various geometric figures. You have to find the areas and the ratios of the areas and things like that, and triangles and rhombuses and different types of quadrilaterals and different types of two-dimensional and three-dimensional figures. So you don't really need to know calculus or advanced partial differential equations or anything to excel in the GRE quant section. The verbal section has mostly text completion, reading comprehension, synonyms, sentence equivalence, these kind of questions. And they may have synonyms, antonyms, analogies, some of these. But the latest in GRE, they don't cover antonyms, they don't cover analogies or sentence correction. So earlier they used to have, the format of these exams, the actual type of questions asked, it keeps varying from year to year. So it keeps changing every few years rather. So earlier, like when I took the GRE long back, like I think in 2002 or 2003 sometime. So that time we had antonyms, analogies, sentence correction, all these questions. But now I think they don't. Again, they might reintroduce it. So you never know. So it's usually easier to max the quantitative section rather than the verbal section. So a lot of people are able to answer all the questions in GRE quantitative section correctly. But verbal, a lot of really brilliant students go there and they come across these words that they're hearing for the first time in their lives. So it's nothing to be panicking about. So you'll see a lot of words that you've never heard of in your life, and you just have to make the best guess based on the origin of the word, or the root of this word, or based on your best guess. You just have to make a guess and get the right answer. So it's nothing unusual to come across a lot of rare words in GRE. So the GRE verbal and quantitative sections contain they're of a duration 30 minutes each. It has 2 sections of 30 minutes each, and it has 40 sections in total as of the year 2016. So the score is scaled up to range from 130 to 170 in 1 point increments. So if you get all 40 questions right, your score will be 170 in verbal and 170 in quantitative section, and the least score is like 130. So your score will range between 130 and 170 in 1 point increments. So it could be 131, 132, anything like that. So scoring range for GRE. So the maximum the score range varies every few years. They keep changing the format. Like many years back, it used to be out of 2400, the GRE. And then when I wrote the GRE, they newly had changed it to like out of 1600 plus analytical writing essay score. That was about like 6 points. So it was 800 points for verbal and 800 for quants. That's the way it used to be earlier. But for the past few years, they have it only out of 170 and 170. So it keeps changing every few years. These scores are reported on the GRE revised general test. A verbal reasoning score you can get between 130 and 170, and quantitative again between 130 and 170. Analytical writing is on a scale of 0 to 6 in 0.5 increments, half point increments. So your essay score will be something like 6 out of 6 or 5.5 or 5 or 4.5 or 4. It goes down like that. So a section in which you answer no questions at all will be reported as a no score. So if you don't answer, you do like, you don't score points for that section, and that can be very costly. So it's very important to be able to complete the exam and answer all the questions to the best of your ability. So GRE is no longer a computer adaptive test. It used to be till August 2011. So one of the frustrating aspects of a computer adaptive test was that whenever you were presented with a question, you had to answer it before moving on. But now, that was because of the adaptive nature of the test. So there was no opportunity to skip a question or revisit a question earlier. But now, I think there is an opportunity. So the new GRE has a multi-stage test, or MST. So in this format, the test takers are evaluated on the performance on 2 separate quantitative and verbal sections or stages. The test adapts from section to section. So you can visit this website, takethegre.com, for guidance on GRE. There's a lot of websites which give you a lot of mock tests online and a lot of preparation material. So you have to look up the official GRE website for the latest information about the format of the GRE and the scoring and the maximum minimum scores and things like that. So I'm talking as of the year 2016. So if you are watching this video a few years later, it might have changed, and don't hold me accountable. Remember, you have to watch the official GRE or GMAT or TOEFL website for the latest news. Retaking the GRE. So you can retake the GRE after 21 days. If you do badly like the first time, after 21 days you can reschedule the GRE. And up to 5 times within any continuous rolling 12-month period, 365 days, you can take it up to 5 times in a year. This applies even if you cancelled your scores on a test taken previously. So even if you cancel the test scores, it's never a good idea to cancel your test scores unless you've done really bad or you suffered a blackout in the exam or something. It's good to just give it your best shot and see what score you get. And you can reschedule it after 21 days. So you can take the paper delivered test as often as it is offered. So in some countries they do offer paper exams, so where you go to the exam center and answer the paper-based test. But in India, most of the centers offer electronic computer-based exam. Universities usually consider only the highest of your currently taken scores. So even if you take the GRE like 5 or 6 times, the university only considers the highest score. And if you have done badly first 5 times and the 6th time you do really well, they're not going to hold it against you. They only consider the highest score, because they want to boost the profile of candidates whom they give admission to at the university, and they want to pick people with highest scores, and for their own reasons, and which is also good for you, they consider only your highest score. So if you have done badly once or twice, it will be in the official record of the testing agency, but they're not going to hold it against you. The universities will not consider that against you. What is the GMAT? GMAT stands for Graduate Management Aptitude Test. GMAT is the entrance exam for MBA or PhD in management in business schools abroad. GMAT is offered in the English language and is offered in most of the countries of the world. GMAT is currently conducted by the ACT. It's a testing agency, just like the EDS. And it's a computer adaptive test. So, if you're planning to apply for an MBA, most universities require that you take the GMAT. There are very few universities that could probably accept a GRE instead of a GMAT. So, in India, if you're planning to do an MBA in the IIMs or like the top management schools, then you have to take the CAT, or the Common Admission Test. That's the entrance exam used for MBA entrance in India. And CAT is usually way, way, way tougher than the GMAT. And if you are preparing for CAT in India, going to a coaching institute or something, preparing for CAT, then GMAT, believe me, becomes very easy. A lot of people try this trick. I mean, they have no intention of pursuing an MBA in India. Even if they get in the IIMs, they don't want to go to the IIMs. They have already decided they're going to go to the US or UK to do an MBA somewhere abroad. And for that, they have to take the GMAT. But if you prepare at the level of CAT, that's Common Admission Test, prepare for CAT, GMAT becomes so easy. So many people use that trick. So it's something you might want to think about. Structure of GMAT exam. Verbal, quantitative and analytical section, or essay writing section. Verbal section has mostly questions in sentence correction, reading comprehension, synonyms, antonyms, analogies, fill in the blanks, grammar, vocabulary, etc. So these are like some of the typical questions in GMAT Verbal. Quantitative section has mostly high school math, arithmetic, algebra, geometry, logic. So you don't really need to know calculus or differential equations to max the GMAT quantitative section. So it's again easier to max the quantitative section of GMAT than the verbal section, usually for most test takers. So, structure of GMAT exam. So there's the essay section. The GMAT starts with 2 essays, time limit 30 minutes each. The essays are scored on a 0 to 6 scale. 6 is the highest score. Score is completely separate from the multiple choice score. So, one essay is analysis of an argument, gives us an argument that someone is making and asks us to evaluate the argument. What are the flaws? How could the argument be improved? So it's a proposition and somebody is making an argument about some proposition, some situation, some hypothetical construct. And you're supposed to analyze if the argument is logical or if there's some flaw in the argument and how can it be made more logical, this kind of analysis. The other essay is analysis of an issue. Gives us a quote and asks us to take a stand, agree or disagree, and explain why. So they present a paragraph, a whole set of paragraphs about a situation, a hypothetical construct, and you have to take a stand. Do you agree with this or disagree? And you have to substantiate your answer with a lot of logical reasoning. So you have to defend the stance with examples from history or from your own experiences. So it's actually very interesting and it's not all that difficult. So I think quite a few people can get like 6 out of 6 in the essay writing section. Mainly you have to get your grammar right, your the flow of reasoning must be right, and you don't have to use really big, uncommon, sophisticated sounding words to get a big score. You can use simple words but which are effective to convey what you want to convey. And it's very important to complete the analysis and not leave it midway through. That's what is important. So quant section. Quantitative section has 2 types of multiple choice questions, data sufficiency and problem solving. There are 37 questions to be solved in 75 minutes. Topics tested include number properties, algebra, geometry, statistics, word problems, and so more. The level of math knowledge should be within the grasp of 11th grade student. However, the level of reasoning required is quite high. So, calculators are not allowed usually. So sometimes, in some exams they may have like an online calculator that you can use. And it depends, the structure of the exam keeps changing from year to year, every few years. So at one point they might have been allowing calculators, maybe now they don't, maybe again they allow. You have to look up the official GMAT website for the latest information, okay? So in the quant section, there are 37 questions, around 18 or 19 are standard multiple choice questions, numerical or mathematical answer choices. These are called problem solving questions. And the next set of questions is data sufficiency questions. I'm going to talk about this later. They give you two clauses, two sets of statements, and you have to say, based on these two statements, can you answer this question? Or based on either statement alone, can you answer the question? Or can you answer the question based on one statement but not on the other? But or even both, using both the statements, you're not able to answer the question. So you have to pick the appropriate answer. It can be tricky if you don't practice well enough in advance. Verbal section. So there's critical reasoning, reading comprehension, and sentence correction mainly. So all the questions are multiple choice. There are 41 questions to be completed in 75 minutes. So if you think about it, for each question you don't even have 2 minutes. So remember, you have to read the big paragraphs for reading comprehension and then answer the questions. So for every question, you can't probably spend more than 40 to 50 seconds. Because there's so much of a time constraint. A lot of people run out of time. Reading comprehension. We are required to read a passage, so 2 or 4 paragraphs, and answer a series of questions to demonstrate our ability to correctly comprehend, analyze, and apply the information we read in order to answer both general questions such as the main idea and specific questions such as why the author states a particular piece of information in the passage. So read these paragraphs and say, what is he saying? There's a lot of questions which they ask, trying to understand whether you have comprehended the passage correctly. And then, why does the author state a particular piece of information? What is he trying to convey through that? So you have to do a lot of deduction and inferences and analysis. Reading comprehension advice. In the reading comprehension section, you must spend only 50% of the time to read the entire passage and allot at least 50% of the time to answer the questions. If you have only 8 minutes to read the entire passage of 6 paragraphs and answer 5 questions. So to read the paragraph and answer 5 questions, you have only 8 minutes. Assuming, okay? So you shouldn't spend more than 4 minutes in reading the entire paragraph and only 4 minutes to answer the 5 questions. So you don't even have like a minute per question, and you have to make sure you don't spend more than 50% of the time in reading the passages. A lot of people spend too much time reading and rereading the passage, and by the time they get to the questions, they don't have much time and they start panicking. Read the passage once, thoroughly, in detail. Pay very close attention, read the passage. And then when you come to the question section, you can always look up the passage. It's right there. It's not going to go anywhere. So, but if you keep rereading the passage, you might run out of time. You get what I mean? So, and if you have some scrap paper, they usually give you scrap paper. You just have to take some notes, jot down some brief points. You don't have to take detailed notes. You won't have time for that. So, make some summary. So, write down some inferences if you really need to. Otherwise, the passage is right there. You don't really have to take any notes. I never took any notes or anything. When you come to the question, you go back to the passage and look up the answer and answer. So it's really not that complicated. Scoring on GMAT. Currently, the GMAT is scored on a scale of 800. Score range and maximum scores for GRE GMAT TOEFL change every few years. A score greater than 700 out of 800 is considered good. So if you have got more than 700, you're kind of good. And if you get 720 and above, you can get admission in top universities for MBA with full funding and scholarship, and also graduate teaching assistantship. So more than 720 is considered a really good score. So I myself had a 760 on 800 in my GMAT in the first attempt. If you prepare for CAT at that level, GMAT becomes very easy. When are exam results given? Verbal and quantitative scores are given at the end of the exam within a few minutes after you hit the submit button. You hit submit final, and then within a few minutes you get the scores. Analytical writing or essay section takes a few weeks to be evaluated. GRE GMAT scores are valid for 5 years, usually, so this might change again, so you have to look up the official website. TOEFL scores are usually valid for 2 years, and this might also change. You have to look up the official TOEFL website. So TOEFL stands for Test of English as Foreign Language. So in countries like India, where English may not be the primary language for a lot of people, you have to demonstrate proficiency in English. That's done by taking the exams like the TOEFL or some other exams. So GMAT, myths and facts. We're going to talk about some of the common miscomprehensions and misunderstandings that people have about GMAT, and we're going to try and clear up people's doubts. Myth: the first 8 questions determine my success in GMAT. So a lot of people think if I don't get the first 8 sections right, I'm screwed. So they spend too much time on the first 8 questions. And the truth is, even if you get the first question right, you get the second question, which is more difficult. You get that right, third question is even more difficult, even more difficult. So even the most advanced test takers, they probably can't get all the first 8 questions right, because it just keeps increasing in difficulty. And that's, I mean, even if you get 1 or 2 wrong, it's okay. It's not, doesn't mean you're screwed, okay? You have to allocate the same amount of time for the first 8 questions as for any other question, because these questions carry an equal weightage when it comes to your number of points each question carries. So remember that you maintain a healthy pace throughout the exam and make sure you complete the exam. Don't waste too much time on the first 8 questions. Allocate no more than 40 to 50 seconds per question. Definitely not more than a minute. So the second myth: if I don't score in the 90th percentile, I won't get into any top B school of my choice. So for those of you who don't know what percentile means, like if you get the 99.99th percentile, it means that 99.99% of the test takers had lower score than yours. And if you score the 90th percentile, means you did better than 90% of the test takers. That's what it means. The fact is, very few people get very high scores. So fewer than 50 of the more than 200,000 people taking the GMAT test every year get a perfect score of 800. So every year about 200,000 people give the GMAT exam, and only about 50 people are able to max it. So it's very difficult to actually max the GMAT. And while you may be exceptionally capable, the odds are against you achieving a perfect score. Also, the GMAT test is just one piece of your application packet. So remember, the admissions committee at the university is going to look at your undergraduate GPA and your statement of purpose, your GRE GMAT score, and letters of recommendation, your work history, and there's so many other documents, your resume, and so many other things. So this is just one part of your application. You don't have to, get really worked up if you don't do so well. Admissions officers use GMAT scores in conjunction with so many other bits of information to make an application decision. Getting an easier question means I answered the last one wrong. Getting an easier question does not necessarily mean you got the previous answer wrong. Many people are not skilled at estimating item difficulty. So suppose you were not sure about a question, you answered to the best of your ability, and the next one seems really easy. They're like, oh my god, I got the previous one wrong. No, that's not necessarily true. Because what you perceive as easy may not be really easy for the person who has, set the questions. So just answer each question to the best of your ability. Don't waste too much time analyzing the difficulty of the questions. Just do your best and, be done with the exam. Don't overanalyze things. Don't overanalyze the complexity of the questions. So another myth: it's more important to respond correctly to the test questions than it is to finish the test. So there is a severe penalty for not completing the GMAT test. If you don't complete the test completely, it's going to affect your score to quite some extent. It's more important to complete the exam than to get every question right. If you cannot find the answer to a question, give it your best guess and move on. If you guess incorrectly, the computer program will likely give you an easier question, which you are likely to answer correctly, and the computer will rapidly return to give you questions matched to your ability. So, failing to answer 5 verbal questions, for example, could reduce your score from the 91st percentile to the 77th percentile. If you leave 5 questions unanswered, incomplete, your score drops so drastically from the 91st percentile to 77th percentile, for example. It's very important to complete the exam. Give it your best guess and just do it. Don't allocate more than 1 minute for any question. Remember that. So, another myth: you need very advanced math skills to get a high GMAT score. That's not true. The math skills questions on the GMAT test are quite basic high school level math. You don't even need to know calculus or partial differential equations to max the quant section. You just have to get your fundamentals right. So revisit your knowledge about triangles, about quadrilaterals, about pentagons and hexagons and octagons and cubes and spheres and geometry, and there's algebra, all this thing, and the data sufficiency part, and then arithmetic, series and progressions, and permutations, combinations, probability, and all these topics. Just get your fundamentals right, and you should be able to max the quant section. If I don't get a good score in the first attempt, my chances of getting admission in the top B school are ruined. So even if you don't do well in the first attempt, you can do well in the second attempt. They're not going to hold it against you. That's a myth. So even if you retake it multiple times, they only consider the highest score. It helps B schools project a higher mean GMAT score and boost their rankings. Let's talk about TOEFL now. We talked about GRE and GMAT. Let's take a brief look at TOEFL. TOEFL stands for Test of English as Foreign Language. It's an exam used to assess a person's knowledge of the English language. TOEFL is required by universities in USA, Canada, Europe, Australia, Singapore, etc. to ensure international applicants have the desired proficiency in English. It's usually only for international applicants. So if you grew up in the US, or you did your undergraduate in the US, then you probably don't have to give the TOEFL exam for applying to grad school in the US. Sometimes, if you already have a master's degree from a particular country, and if you're doing a second master's degree or a PhD, then you may not have to give the TOEFL. But some universities may require to give it again. So you have to check with the university, okay? So some countries like Australia use IELTS instead of TOEFL. It's another test of English language. So, unless specified otherwise, you have to take TOEFL. If the university specifically says they accept IELTS, then you take IELTS. Otherwise, you have to take TOEFL. TOEFL has all questions related to English: vocabulary, grammar, synonyms, antonyms, analogies, sentence structure, reading comprehension. There's a listening skills section. So you have to listen to the accent, the person talking, and answer questions. So in the listening section, you have to be very careful to pay attention, because if you miss something, you probably won't get the answer right. You have to listen to every word. You usually have like headphones, and you have to be very careful in the listening section. And speaking proficiency. So there, the structure of the exam keeps changing from every few years. So the first time I gave the TOEFL, I think in 2002, there was no speaking proficiency section. The next time I gave the TOEFL, I think sometime in 2008, they had newly introduced the speaking section, and I had not prepared anything for TOEFL. I mean, I had written the GMAT, and then I was applying for MBA, and I just went to the TOEFL exam, just basic preparation. I had not even bothered to study, what is the structure of the exam. And I was really surprised that they have now like a speaking section. The first time I'd taken TOEFL in 2002, I think I had maxed it or almost maxed it. It's really easy compared to GRE and GMAT. So I went there, what? There's a speaking section. I was like really surprised. And then while speaking, you have to be very articulate and make sure they understand what you say. So each question is timed with a limit of 30 seconds to 15 minutes. So you have to be focused throughout the exam. TOEFL exam advice. So in the speaking section, speak articulately, loud and clear. So don't worry about disturbing your fellow test takers with your speaking. So there was like people sitting next to each other, okay? I was like worried, hey, if I talk loudly into the microphone, the other people are probably going to get disturbed. But usually they have their headphones on, and they're probably not going to hear much of what you say. And I spoke like really softly, when I was answering my TOEFL one time. And because of the softness, whatever, my answers were probably not clear. I didn't actually max the TOEFL. They cut some points in the speaking section because they said it wasn't very clear. So talk loud and clear and articulate. Don't worry about disturbing your fellow test takers, okay, your neighbors. You have to, convey what you want to, okay? Keep time in mind for each question. Keep yourself constantly alert and focused. Don't slack off. This is an interesting bit of advice. Take the TOEFL before you take the GRE or GMAT. So most of you are probably taking these exams for the first time, and you don't know what is TOEFL, what is GRE, what is GMAT. So GRE and GMAT are usually much tougher than TOEFL. So if you take the TOEFL first, it's like the easiest of these exams. You get a hang of it. You get to understand what these exams are all about, how to answer them, how to time them. You get some good practice, real-time practice. So please, please, please take the TOEFL before you take the GRE or the GMAT. So people usually make some mistakes the first time they give a computer adaptive test or a computer-based test. They're not used to it, so there's a possibility of making some mistakes. Make those mistakes in the TOEFL. So in the TOEFL, even if you don't max it, or as long as you just get above the cutoff or the average TOEFL score, that's good enough. Nobody's going to hold it against you if you get a low TOEFL score, as long as it's not below the cutoff. So, but if you get a low GRE or GMAT score, it's going to weigh your application down. So take the TOEFL first, get enough practice, and then give your GRE and GMAT. Scheduling your exam. So schedule your exam early, especially in the peak season. So if you're applying to fall semester, you have to have your exam scores by November. So before August or September, you have to take the exam. So between June and August, there's like a lot of demand for these exams, and also in some other months of the year. So look up the scheduling and see how long you have to wait to get a slot for the GRE or GMAT, and also for TOEFL. You may have to wait for more than 1 or 2 months or even longer sometimes in order to get an appointment for GRE, TOEFL, TOMAT in your city. And there was one time I had to take I had already studied, I had pursued my master's in computer science in the US, and after a couple of years I was applying for an MBA. So I thought I don't have to take TOEFL again. But then the university told me that I had to take TOEFL again. And I was like, what? I didn't know that. And so I tried to schedule my TOEFL exam. It was like the peak season. I was like running out of time. And I come from Bangalore originally in India. And there was no slot available for the next 2.5 months in Bangalore. So I had to go to Mangalore and I take the TOEFL exam over there. So you can schedule your GRE exam online at ets.org. And if you just Google it, you'll know where to schedule your TOEFL and GMAT exams. It depends on which testing agency is conducting these exams. So sometimes it's ETS, sometimes it's ACT. So, you have to just look up the latest information and you have to know where to schedule your exams. Just Google it, you will find it. Traveling to the exam center. So double check and verify the location of your ETS, or your ACT testing facility where you have scheduled your exam. Visit the exam center the previous day and confirm the location with the testing agency. So even if you grew up in the city, there's a chance that you probably won't be able to get to the correct exam testing facility. So it happened to me. I had scheduled my GRE exam somewhere in Bangalore, I think on Dickinson Road or something, and then somehow I got confused because there are like 2 testing centers close to each other, and I took an auto rickshaw because it's you don't want to drive a 2-wheeler or a 4-wheeler when you're going to give an exam, right? So I took an auto rickshaw and I went to the wrong testing center, and I go there and like, hey, this is not your testing facility. I'm like, oh my god. And then I went to the correct facility, and if you go more than half an hour late, they won't let you take the exam. I was about 20 minutes late, but luckily they let me in and I was able to complete the exam on time. And I think I had a really good GRE score too. The quantitative section, I had maxed it. I remember I had an 800 on 800. Verbal, I don't know, I think 640 on 800 or something like that. So even though I went 20 minutes late, I decided to take it and I did get a good score. But please don't make that mistake. So try to reach the test center at least 1 hour early to account for traffic jams, accidents, all these things. You never know what might go wrong. And double check the address. Make sure you go to the correct facility. Use a GPS and use the Google Maps, whatever. Make sure you go to the right testing center. Don't be overconfident about these things. And if possible, visit the exam center the previous day to make sure you get a hang of it. So exam day advice. Get enough sleep, at least 6 to 8 hours the previous night. The last thing you want is to feel sleepy in the exam. And helps a lot to reduce stress and stay calm and focused. So why don't you watch something really funny? Watch like The Big Bang Theory, watch some Charlie Chaplin movies, watch something really funny. laugh and laugh and laugh like the previous evening, okay? Just de-stress yourself. Do a lot of yoga and meditation and stay calm. It really helps to de-stress. Last day, it doesn't matter how much you cram yourself, okay? It's not going to make too much of a difference to your score. So last day, just relax. Set multiple alarms on the morning of the exam. So if you have someone to wake you up, it's okay. But otherwise, set multiple alarms, like 3 or 4 alarms, because a lot of people have the habit of, turning off the alarm and going to bed. So set 3 or 4 alarms, remember. Don't be overconfident about these things. And ask a friend to drop you off at the exam center if possible. You can have a casual chat with your friend, which can de-stress you. And it's not a good idea for your parents to accompany you to the exam center, because parents are parents. They, kind of sometimes make you uncomfortable, and then they have all these high expectations from you. They're going to ask you how you did, and if your parents waiting outside, you're going to get annoyed, and they can get on your nerves, and they can give you too much unwanted advice which irritates you, whatever, okay? Better to go with a friend. And they may make you nervous or stressed out. Your parents, it's never a good idea to take your parents to the exam hall. So pack your bags the previous day. So if you have an exam the next day, don't wait to do it on the morning of the exam. So get a backpack, get a water bottle in it. You may not be allowed to take the water bottle into the exam hall, but it's okay. You can at least use it on the way. Yeah, put your water bottle there, and your ID, your passport, your appointment confirmation letters, and whatever documents you need to take. Put it all, pack your bags the previous night, okay? Don't be overconfident about these things. What to carry to the exam? First of all, dress warmly. These centers are often air-conditioned, and if you don't have a sweater, it might be uncomfortable for you to sit through the test. So remember, most of these testing centers are air-conditioned. And if you're not used to being in the cold, you might be very uncomfortable. So it's good to wear like a jacket or something on your clothes. You can wear it if you like, or it's good to wear a warm top or something like that. Wear some warm clothes. Keep your backpack in the locker outside the testing facility. You cannot carry your cell phone or laptop inside the testing facility. Carry a water bottle with you into the exam hall if allowed. Don't forget to use the restroom before starting the exam. So before starting the exam, always don't forget to use the restroom, because you never know. And there's only some scheduled breaks. So you don't want to interrupt yourself in the exam. So scratch paper. So the testing agency will supply some scratch paper, and you can just raise your hand and request more scratch paper as and when you need it. And during the break time, it's good to go and refill your scratch paper supply if you need it. So it's used to make quick notes, and it's used to, especially for quantitative section, to work out the answers to the problems. You'll need scratch paper. So during the break time, scheduled breaks, good to go and get more scratch paper if you need it. Breaks. So there's a 10-minute break following the third section, and a 1-minute break between the other test sections. You might want to ask for and replenish your scratch paper during the breaks. And if you need to visit the restroom or take an unscheduled break, the timer will continue to tick, okay? And you'll risk running out of time. So make sure you go to the restroom in the break as well, scheduled break. So you should proceed without interruption once you start the test. So now we're going to talk about how to prepare for the GRE and GMAT verbal section. How to boost your vocabulary. So vocabulary is like the set of words that you know. It's the number of words and meanings and synonyms and antonyms that you know. So in the GRE exam, no matter how much you prepare, you're going to come across some words which you hear for the first time, and it's nothing to be afraid or panic about. So if you use the root identification technique, you can guess the meanings, synonyms and antonyms of these words with greater ease and accuracy. And you must use your own funny ways of remembering new words. So a lot of words, if you try and do the root cause, the roots, try and identify the root part of the word and how the word is built around the root, then you'll probably be able to guess the meanings or opposites of these words. It's very important to try and understand the root. Like anything ending with L-O-G-Y, logy, is like a study of something, it's a science of something. So biology is the study of biological organisms. And etymology is the study of origin of words. Entomology is the study of insects. So when you see logy, you know it's like the study of something. Usually, okay, usually. And if you see words starting with like dis, D-I-S, it's usually like the lack of something. So you try and use these root parts of the words. Studying for verbal GRE. So you can use the Barron's Study Guide. It's a really good book. Review the Barron's 333 high frequency words and Barron's 1100 words you need to know. So there's all these lists of words and funny ways to remember these words and sentences in which these words are used, so you can know their meanings and opposites. And there's this website called magoosh.com, and review the Magoosh basic word lists and common word lists. These are again good sources of information online. You don't really have to take GRE coaching, or GMAT coaching. If you're self-motivated, there's everything available on the internet, and I have a bunch of videos too, and you can buy a few books and prepare on your own. You don't really have to go to a coaching class. So a lot of people can max it by just studying at home. So for my GRE, when I took it in 2002, I never went to any coaching class. I prepared mostly using Barron's and a few mock exams. And those days there was not so much online material either. But in 2002 we didn't even have Gmail, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't even have those things. But there were some sources, and I bought some books and some CDs, and I was able to get a pretty good score. So it depends on how good your foundations are, and how self-motivated you are, and how much you can remember, how much effort you put in, how much guidance you need. It depends on your personality. So focus on the techniques of roots or origin of these words. So read the verbal sections, word quizzes in Reader's Digest and Competition Success Review magazines. So in Reader's Digest, like when I was an undergrad engineering student in Bangalore, so I used to go to various book vendors, and there was this old lady in Malleshwaram who used to sit and sell Reader's Digest used second-hand magazines for like 5 rupees per magazine. She used to sell these, and I used to buy them in bulk from her, and I would go over all these word lists. They have all these interesting sections about like words and their meanings and things like that. I used to go over a lot of those in my high school days and undergraduate days. It really helped me to remember a lot of words and their meanings. So there are a lot of these good books which you can go over, and you can take a lot of quizzes online, mock tests online. There are a lot of apps, GRE apps, puzzles, mock tests. So just Google it, you'll find plenty of them. Just download them and you can take it even on your mobile phones or something. When I gave the GRE long time back, we didn't even have like smartphones, and we didn't have all these apps, but now there's like tons and tons of them, so you can just review them. I've also got plenty of coaching material for verbal and quantitative sections, which is a very good source of information. But if you also, in addition to that, if you go over the Barron's GRE book and a couple of websites, you should be good. I mean, you don't have to go to the best coaching class and pay a lot of money to max the GRE and GMAT. So it's good to carry a pocket dictionary with you. So it's a habit I had right from my middle school days. So in my middle school, high school days and engineering days, I would always have a dictionary in my backpack. And anytime I came across a new word, even when I was a master's student, when I was studying, every time I came across a new word, I would just look it up in the dictionary then and there. And that helped me to remember the context in which I came across the word. It helps you remember things better. Like, for example, I was one time interning in New York, and my manager told me to take a 3-day hiatus and focus on something else and then come back and work on this. So I didn't know what a hiatus means. So luckily I had a dictionary and I looked it up and said, okay, a hiatus means like a break, a diversion. So I was like, okay. So it's good to carry a dictionary. Nowadays you don't even need to carry a dictionary with you. You can just go to www.dictionary.com or thesaurus.com and look up the meaning of the word on your smartphones or your laptops. So it's good to look up the word. Every time you come across a new word, look up the meaning then and there. It helps you remember the context in which you learned the word. So any word you come across, if you remember how you learned that word, you're going to remember it better. So solve crosswords. So remember to solve good quality crosswords. So so you don't have to solve crosswords which include too many puns and slangs and that kind of words. solve standard crosswords. Like for example, there's this Deccan Herald newspaper in India, and on Saturdays they have this crossword that is of a good standard. So when I was in my high school, my high school days and undergrad days, every Saturday I would cut out that portion of the crossword, solve it with a lot of interest, and I had a collection of almost 1,000 crosswords. So it helped me, develop my vocabulary and do well in my GRE and GMAT verbal sections. So solving crosswords is an interesting way of doing it. There's a lot of interesting online games and apps and things too. So you can print out those Saturday crosswords puzzles from the Deccan archives if you like. I mean, you don't even have to. I mean, there's so many online websites now which gives you very interesting formats of exams and interesting ways of remembering words. So simplify layers in verbal and quant. So a lot of questions in verbal and quantitative section use a lot of unnecessary data, just to mask the really simple statement core sentence. That's added just to confuse you. So this is a technique which will help you analyze the synonyms and antonyms of and the meanings of various phrases. So for example, if you have a sentence, okay, and you have to correct the sentence, for example, the golden sun peeking in between the white clouds were setting slowly at dusk over the horizon. So if you look at the whole sentence, it might be very hard to identify the mistake in the sentence. So remove the unwanted parts, the layers. So the golden sun peeking in between the white clouds. So is there anything wrong in this part, peeking in between the white clouds? Just try and eliminate that part, okay? Put that aside for now. So the golden sun were setting slowly at dusk over the horizon. So at dusk over the horizon, there's nothing wrong with that. Eliminate that layer. So you're left with the core sentence, okay? This is all added just to distract the user. The core sentence is the golden sun, okay? You can even eliminate golden. So the sun were setting slowly. Sun were setting slowly. So immediately you know that's wrong. The sun was setting slowly, right? So immediately you can fix it. So when it comes to sentence completion, sentence correction, always use this layering technique to eliminate this unwanted information. Get the core phrase, the core sentence, and you'll be able to correct it and answer it, identify it correctly. Learn popular words. So study this list of confusing words carefully. So I have a whole video, I think it's a 3-part video I have on Coolgrad.com about sets of confusing words like collision and collusion, access and assess, and yoke, and insure, ensure, assure. These are commonly confusing words. So I've got a whole series of videos about that, and there's also multiple websites which talk about confusing words. So please make sure you go through this list of confusing words and get the meanings correctly and how to use them in sentences correctly. So if you familiarize yourself with the meanings, synonyms and antonyms of the top 300 most frequently asked words, that will help you a lot in boosting your GRE GMAT score. The top 300 most frequently asked words. Learn their synonyms, learn their antonyms, and multiple meanings. That's nothing but synonyms. So the most frequently asked 300 words. These are very important. And take as many mock exams as you can to get an idea of timing. But in these mock exams, for my GMAT, I remember I would be at home taking mock exams all day long. And out of 800, sometimes they deliberately give you a very low score just to make their exam seem really tough or something. So I would get only between 500 and 600 out of 800. So I would study all my mistakes, whatever, but I knew I would do much better on my actual GMAT. So don't get afraid or panic about the scores you get on these mock exams. They just want to make their material look really complicated, okay? So they just give you a deliberately low score. Because if these mock exams keep giving you 700s and 800s, and in the actual GMAT, it might make you overconfident, you might get a lower score, then you might tell people, hey, don't buy this mock GMAT material, it's no good or something. But if you get a low score on this, then it might make you afraid and make you think it's really difficult. It's just like, a marketing tactic they use. So in these mock GMAT exams, or mock GRE exams, if you get a much lower score than you expect, don't panic. In the actual exam, you might get a much better score. It happens to a lot of people. So in my mock exams, I was getting only between 500 and 600 on GMAT. But in the actual exam, the first attempt, I got 760 on 800. So, verbal questions, sentence correction. So these sentences test us on the correct use of grammar, mostly. Grammar topics include parallelism, modifiers, subject-verb agreement, verb tenses, pronouns, comparisons, idioms, and more. So, I have videos about all these, and you can go over the examples. Critical reasoning. These questions test us on our ability to analyze the line of reasoning used in an argument. We may be asked to strengthen or weaken an argument, to identify an assumption used in the argument, or draw a conclusion to explain a discrepancy, and so on. Do I need coaching classes? As I said, for CAT, it's like much tougher. So people go to a lot of CAT coaching institutes. You might need them. Most people need them. And if you prepare for CAT, GMAT, GRE become really easy. But for GRE, GMAT, you don't really need to go to a coaching class. I was able to max both of them without going to GRE or GMAT coaching. I got pretty good scores in both of them. But of course, my fundamentals were very strong, and I had built up a good vocabulary and grammar over many years. So it depends on your background and your personality, and also on how self-motivated you are, how much time you have. It depends on all these things. So, some preparation tips for GMAT. Take numerous mock GMAT exams, online and also from your CDs. So if you get a low score, don't get disheartened. And if you prepare for CAT, GMAT becomes very easy. It's like a very good trick to use. So, and if any of your friends have like CAT coaching material, maybe you could just borrow it from them and then return it if you can't afford to go to this CAT coaching class or something. And Barron's GRE material is good. It's not only used for GRE, it can be used for GMAT also, because it's the same set of popular words and lists and synonyms and antonyms. It can be used for GMAT and TOEFL also. Look up some grammar websites online and refresh your memory about parts of speech, figures of speech, tenses of verbs, etc. So I have some videos about these. So I have this, for example, entire video about the different figures of speech. So most people are only familiar with 3 figures of speech. That is simile, metaphor, and personification. But there are so many other figures of speech that I've talked about in my video. So why don't you watch that video about the figures of speech? And some people also know about euphemisms. But then there are so many other figures of speech. So why don't you try and go over those? It'd be really useful for you. So the videos that I have on my website, they're not only useful for GRE and GMAT and TOEFL, they can also be used for CAT preparation, especially the more elaborate ones on figures of speech and things like that. So it's good just even for your general knowledge. So why don't you spend some time and go over them? So quants, I'll give you some tips. So refresh your formulas and memories about like 2D and 3D geometry. So for circles, triangles, parallel lines, quadrilaterals, and three-dimensional figures, make sure you know the formulas for calculating the perimeter, the surface area, and the volumes. Study different quadratic equations, learn how to formulate these equations from given data and apply them to various types of problems. Fundamentals must be very strong. You can apply it to any type of problems. So remember, in arithmetic you have to learn about series and progressions. You probably did it in your high school, but you have to refresh your memory. You have to get the formula handy so you can easily apply it. And probability, permutations, combinations, ratios and proportions. So there's direct proportion, inverse proportion. If you know the formula, the trick, you can apply it to like any problems. And work out a lot of problems in probability to get so that you get the tricky parts covered. So in data sufficiency, they give you 2 statements, A and B, which will provide some info related to the question. So 4 answer options. You have to choose one. If the question can be answered by one of the statements alone but not by the other. And 2, if the question can be answered by using either statement alone 3. If the question can be answered by using both the statements together but cannot be answered by using either statement alone. And 4. If the question cannot be answered by either or both of the statements together. So these are your 4 answer choices. It can be tricky. You need a lot of practice with data sufficiency. So some common traps that people fall into. Look at the first statement A. So there are 2 statements A and B. Read the first statement A. And if you can answer the question using A alone, don't be tempted to pick option 1 or 2 immediately. So either you can answer it using A and not B, or you can answer it using A alone and B alone. So answer options will be 1 or 2. So you don't need both the statements to answer the question. And using both the statements, you cannot answer the question. That's also not true. So the answer will be 1 or 2. But don't be tempted to pick option 1 immediately. It could be 1 or 2. And if using A, you're not able to answer that question, don't be tempted to pick option 1 or 4 immediately. So using A, you could not answer the question. So using B, you could answer the question. Or using B also, you cannot answer the question. So the options can be only 1 or 4. Because using both answering the question is ruled out. And answering the question using either statement is ruled out. So 2 and 3 are ruled out if you cannot answer using A. So look at the first statement A. If you can use that information to answer the question, then your answer choices are 1 or 2. And if you cannot answer the question using A alone, your answer choices are 1 or 4. And then you go to statement B. Remember, you have to look at both the statements before you answer the data sufficiency question. See if B can answer the question. Can you answer the question using B alone? Forget about A. Just look at B. Can you answer the question using B alone? Then, if you can answer using A alone and B alone, then your answer choice is option 2. And you cannot answer using B alone, but you can answer using A. Then your answer choice is 1. And if you could not answer using A, then if you can answer only using B alone, then your answer choice is 1. And if you cannot answer using B also, then your answer choice is 4. So sometimes you cannot answer using A, but using A alone. But if you use B in conjunction with A, you can't answer using A alone or B alone. But if you use, so this is another trap that people fall into. So they see using A alone I cannot answer. So using B alone I cannot answer. So immediately they'll pick the option 4. Meaning using either statement I could not solve it. They forget to check using both statements A and B together. So using A and B together, are you able to answer the question? Then you pick option 3. How to prep for the analytical essay writing section. So the testing agency will give you a word processor. You have to type your answers in the word processor, some similar to MS Word. You must write a complete essay with a good introduction, detailed content in the middle, development of your proposition, and then a proper conclusion. Better to draft the entire essay overall and then refine each paragraph by adding more details. Some people try to write, think and think and think, and they write the most beautiful introduction and they write the most beautiful next 2 paragraphs, and there's no time to write a conclusion. That's actually going to weigh your score down. To the best of your ability, set the pace based on the 30 minutes you have or something, and draft the entire essay, and then you can, beautify it later. Don't write essays that are too long, you risk running out of time. So you need a lot of practice in these things. So are analytical scores important? For MS program, they may not attach much importance for your analytical writing section scores, but for PhD programs admissions, they look at analytical writing scores very seriously. So a score of 5, 5.5 or 6 out of 6 is considered good in analytical writing. So less than 5, it might weigh your application down a little bit. Remember, these programs are highly competitive. Like for example, Harvard or Stanford for MBA admissions, the acceptance rate is hardly like 7 to 10%. So they don't even need a really good reason to reject your application. They find 2 candidates, one candidate is really strong but his analytical writing score is only 4.5. Another candidate has got slightly lower credentials but he's got a 6 on 6 in his analytical writing. They might actually pick the other one and drop you. They don't have to give you a reason. So try to, make your application stand out and excel in every possible way. Put some effort, it's worth it. So I got a 6 on 6 every time I took GRE or GMAT or TOEFL. It's like I was able to max it. It's not very difficult if your fundamentals, your grammar, your vocabulary, and your reasoning is good. All questions are of the same value in GRE or GMAT. You may find it difficult to answer a tough question. Don't waste too much time on it. Mark your best guess and move on to the easier questions, by answering which you can score the same easily. It's more important to complete the test and not leave any questions unanswered. Don't spend more than 4 minutes on any question, for God's sake. So typically you should spend not more than 40-50 seconds or 1 minute on every question. But worst case, if you're looking at a critical reasoning question or something, not more than 4 minutes. Okay. So average time in the exams, how much time people take for different sections. For quantitative, they usually take about 2 minutes per question. Sentence correction, usually 1 minute 15 seconds at the most per question. Critical reasoning, 2 minutes per question. Reading comprehension, 2 to 3 minutes per question. Reading comprehension general questions, 1.5 minutes per question. Reading comprehension specific questions, 1.5 minutes per question. This is the average time reported by various test takers. So remember to shortlist universities before you go to the exam. So at the end of your GRE GMAT TOEFL exams, before you hit submit, you have to give the names of 4 universities to whose programs you want to submit your exam score. Suppose you're doing a master's in mechanical engineering and you have shortlisted Purdue University, Rice University, Harvard, and Stanford. So you have to submit your GRE scores to these 4 universities, and then if you want to submit later to any more universities, it costs about $25 to $27 to submit the actual score to each university. So don't miss this opportunity to send it free of cost to 4 universities. Do your research. You never know what your actual exam score is going to be, but you already know what your undergraduate GPA is. You already know to which country you want to go, and you already have probably done enough research about which program you want to pursue. You already know what are the top universities, tier 2 universities, and low-ranked universities in the subject in this country. So based on your geographical preferences, based on your profile, based on your statement of purpose, based on how confident you are, based on the funding situation, based on where your friends are, where you want to go, you have to shortlist at least 4 universities, which you can submit at the end of the GRE or GMAT exam. Otherwise, it's going to cost you more than $100 just to submit course to these 4 universities later. So, based on your credentials, your preferences, based on the funding situation, watch my video about how to shortlist universities. And you have to first, make a list of, suppose you decide you want to do you're thinking about whether you want to do an MIS or an MBA or an MS. First, you have to watch my videos about what each of these programs entail, or a PhD, okay? So, decide which program you want to pursue. Then watch my videos about the different countries and the pros and cons. Think about whether you want to go to Canada or UK or Germany or US or Australia or Singapore or some other country. Think about that. Suppose you decide you want to do an MBA in the United States. Then you have to take the GMAT. So prepare for it. And then for MBA in the US, there's the top 100 list of universities. So you have to review the funding situation in each university, because see, suppose you're paying for your GMAT, you don't care about whether they give you funding or not, then the situation is different. But if getting a complete scholarship is of paramount importance to you, then your criteria are different. So based on your profile, your preferences, your criteria, do your research and shortlist about 20 universities which are good for you to apply to. So you don't know what your actual GMAT score will end up to be, right, till you actually give the exam. So suppose you get a GMAT score between 720 to 800 or 720 to 760, for example. You want to apply to 4 B schools in the US ranked between 1 and 20. So if you get more than 720, you get the exam score, I think, and then you decide, where to submit your, like which 4 universities you can submit to. So assuming your score will be somewhere between this range, then you want to probably apply to 4 schools in the top 20 in the US. So probably like say Wharton, Stanford, Kelly Business School at Indiana University, or Anderson, UCLA. So those must be your shortlist, for example. And then if your score ends up between say 680 to 720, you want to think about which schools, in which schools you have a great chance of getting admission. So maybe you want to think about slightly lower ranked universities, like business schools ranked between 20 and 40. Say Rice, Purdue, Arizona State University, and University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So these might be the 4 you shortlisted. Suppose your GMAT score actually ends up, it's probably going to end up between like 630 to 680 out of 800. Then you want to apply to slightly lower ranked universities between 35 and 65. For example, University of Arizona, University of Texas at Dallas, University of Houston, or University of Illinois Chicago. Those might be the 4 you shortlisted. Depending on what your score is probably going to be, you have to have different sets of universities shortlisted, and you apply to these 4. Okay? I hope you get it. So, now I'm going to give you some really unconventional but very interesting advice about how to max the GRE GMAT TOEFL exams and also any exam in life. So this is about using some spiritual powers. So I've taken a lot of spiritual courses, attended spiritual courses lately, and I know thousands of people who have attended these spiritual programs, and they awaken their third eye. It's like, any spiritual seeker knows what it is. It's called the Ajna chakra. So they're like the 7 chakras in the body, main 7 chakras. It's like the point of intersection of the nerves. And there's one here that's called, in English, they call it the pineal gland. So the pineal gland it's an organ, it's between the eyebrows, behind the, the forehead, and it has the same kind of cells as the other 2 eyes. So it's like the rods and cones. It's called the third eye. So if you go to any spiritual guru, do a lot of yoga, meditation, it can even get activated on its own, or from the initiation of an enlightened master, it can get activated. So when your third eye is activated, Ajna chakra is activated, you get all these amazing spiritual powers. It awakens the power of intuition. So when your third eye is activated, you'll be able to read people's minds. For example, you ask somebody to think of something in his mind, and you'll be able to know what he's thinking about. Isn't that like a cool power to have? It makes you a powerful human being. And you'll be able to read like blindfolded through your third eye. There are thousands of people already demonstrating these powers, okay? So don't waste your time questioning it. Look, you're probably surprised that I'm talking about this, but I know what I'm talking about. So just bear with me. So once your third eye is awakened, like, you get all these spiritual powers, it awakens the power of intuition. So, for example, somebody has a cell phone there, you'll be able to crack their password. Really? Yes, really. So, and suppose you come across a word in the GRE or GMAT exam, intuitively you know what it means and what's the antonym of this word. Intuitively you know the answers. Isn't that like cool? So, I know a lot of people who employ these amazing spiritual powers to max so many of their exams, not only GRE and GMAT. So any exams, like I know one very famous holistic healer. She is doing a PhD, and she was telling me for so many exams, she could visualize the entire book in front of her eyes, and she could just read it and answer her exams. So even if it's a closed book exam, isn't that like amazing? So there are all these people who awaken their spiritual powers, and it's almost like they have an unfair advantage over the others who are not spiritual, who don't employ these powers. I mean, it's nothing illegal, of course, but I'm saying, if you don't awaken your power of intuition and use these powers, you are at a disadvantage compared to all these spiritual seekers who employ these powers. I don't want you to be stupid. I want you to also benefit from these amazing powers, okay? So, like, I feel sorry for a lot of these exam takers, okay? They prepare for like 1 year, prepare for 2 years, and still they don't get a good score in the exam. They go there, they're not able to, they suffer blackouts, they're not able to guess the answers, they come back dejected. And there's all these cool spiritual people, okay? So there's like just 3-week programs, 1-month programs, they attend them, and they get their power of intuition awakened, and they're strong, really strong human beings. They just intuitively know the answers. And they do so well, not only these exams, but any exam in life. I want you to be one of those cool people. Try it with an open mind. I know what I'm talking about, okay? This might seem crazy, but it isn't. Why don't you go with an open mind and try this out? I mean, if it can help you max any exam in life, why wouldn't you want to have these powers? So, I'm saying, just do your research online about the Agna Chakra, third eye awakening, the pineal gland. You'll know what it's all about. And if you are even remotely spiritual, you already know what it is. So, watch on the internet and YouTube. There are numerous videos of people who can read blindfolded, who can, through the power of intuition, they can guess the answers, they can read your mind, they can all these things. This is real, okay? If one or two people do it, it's miracle, but not when like hundreds of thousands of people do it. It's an ancient Vedic science, and I would like you to benefit from its powers. So, these cool spiritual people, they study just for a few weeks. Of course, they have to do their basic homework. They study for a few weeks. And they're able to really max any exam in life. Isn't that like cool? So, I've got some links here on YouTube. You can, just search for this, okay? People demonstrating third eye awakening or reading blindfolded. You'll see a lot of people demonstrating all these amazing powers of intuition. This is not crazy. I know what I'm talking about. I had to talk about this, okay? Because I feel sorry for all these, millions of people who are slogging for months and years and they don't get good exam scores. And there's these cool spiritual people who study just for like a couple of weeks or, hardly a month, and they're able to max any exam in life. It's almost like they have an unfair advantage, and I don't want that to be. I want everyone to be able to take advantage of these spiritual powers. So, try meeting some spiritual gurus. Like, do a lot of yoga, meditation before you go abroad for your higher studies. It's really good for you. And, like say, Paramahamsa Nityananda in the Birdya Ashram in Bangalore is one of my spiritual gurus. And the Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev, Coimbatore, Isha Foundation. I mean, a lot of these are like, great enlightened masters. There's Pilot Baba in Haridwar in North India. Paramahamsa Nardananda in Ujjain Ashram. I recently met him in the Kumbh Mela. And some of them might require you to stay for a few days and prepare your body with, doing some yoga meditation before they awaken your third eye. But some of them, they just awaken your powers whether you're ready for it or not. Like, for example, Swami Nityananda conducts this amazing 3-week program. It's called Inner Awakening. I've done this myself. And he bestows you with these amazing spiritual powers. And you're going to come out a really powerful, spiritually awakened person. Why don't you just try it? It's worth it. Try it and you won't regret it. You'll be grateful for me for having given you this bit of advice. So let's talk now about in the exam, don't panic for any reason. You come across something, think with a cool head, okay? At the most your answer might be wrong, you lose a point. It's okay, it's nothing to panic about. So when you start panicking, you get nervous and you can't think, okay? So if you find a lot of new words that you're coming across for the first time in your GRE exam or even in GMAT, there's nothing to panic about, it's quite normal. And even though I came across a lot of words that I came across for the first time, I just gave my best guess and I ended up with a pretty good score. So don't panic. And sometimes, you can mark multiple choice answers for review and return to them in some sections. But I strongly advise you not to do that because you might run out of time and then you won't have time to review it. Just do your best guess, answer it and just move on. That's my bit of advice. Having, maxed my GRE and done very well on my GRE and GMAT when I took them. Just give your best guess and just move on. Don't, panic too much or overanalyze things. So, this brings us to the end of this video about GRE GMAT advice. And I'm sure you got some very unconventional advice. So think about what I said about those spiritual powers. Try it out. I'm not crazy. I know what I'm talking about. And I hope you also got a lot of useful information about the sources of information, where to study, how to prepare, and what to do on the exam day, and how to schedule your exam and things like that. And I wish you the very best of luck. Usually people take the GRE GMAT, like once in a lifetime and do it well the very first time. Thank you.